Okay. Hi, my name is JannaJohns,
And I'm Paola Gonzalez.
and our activity is the Blindfold Collaborative Activity, and this activity is for Purdue University students.
All right, so our activity is the blindfold maze activity. And essentially what we would do in this activity is we would split our classroom up into two groups. One group will be made out of only two students, and the other group will be larger, made of everyone else in the classroom. So both of the groups would select one person to be blindfolded, and then the team will receive a maze printed on a piece of paper, kind of like the one on the screen. And the group members who aren't blindfolded are responsible for guiding the blindfolded group member to the end of the maze using only verbal instructions. So go up, farther left, down, right, and then each group will be timed. So the group with the fastest time would win. And this activity should take the class about 5 minutes to complete.
Okay, and then our goals of this blindfold activity is, first of all, we want the end result to be the group with only two members to complete the maze quicker, and this will show that one person is easier to listen to than having multiple people and trying to multitask to complete the maze. And so we also hope to show that there's an importance of listening and leading collaboratively regardless of the group size. So both groups have to view the perspective of both the group members and the listeners. And then the listeners are responsible for communicating their concerns and asking for clarity to complete the maze. And leaders have to use supportive and inclusive methods to achieve success. And since the group with more than two members will have members looking at the maze from different angles, members will need to consider different perspectives while guiding the person who is blindfolded. And then the ways this activity will help students develop their leadership skills is, first of all, collaborative leadership. It will help members learn to listen to each other, and also the blindfolded person take into account multiple people who are speaking to them and trying to help them with the task. And this is also a really good bonding activity. It helps the members learn about the different personalities, the strengths and weaknesses of their group members. And in the future, it will also lead students to be more comfortable sharing because they get to know their members. And then secondly, it leads to active listening skills. Like I mentioned before, multitasking is a lot harder than just listening to one person, and so it really forces the person who is blindfolded to listen to multiple people and include different perspectives from all of the members. And lastly, it will help the students in the future in their careers by helping them gain the collaborative leadership skills and the active listening skills.
All right, so this activity can really includes the 6 different collaborative leadership practices that we learned about in class, because the group members and the listeners had to kind of take into account these practices and apply them in order to achieve success of reaching the end of the maze. So for example, self-reflection, you can apply that to the listener, the person blindfolded, because they kind of really needed to reflect on what they were struggling with, whether they needed more clarification or they needed the members to be more specific about where they needed to draw the line. And for the group members, self-reflection was really important, especially for the larger group, because they really needed to kind of take a step back and make sure that they weren't leading too much and not sharing the power enough in order, and like to the point where they were kind of consuming all the power and not letting the other group members participate. And then developing people and sharing power and building trust, especially played a role again in the larger group, because all the group members really needed to make sure that they were sharing and taking turns and making sure that everyone's thoughts and opinions and perspectives were taken into account in order to reach the end of the map, just like Jana said, like different perspectives, whether you were looking at the map from the left or from the right, different directions would be seen differently. So making sure that everyone kind of shared the way they viewed the map was really important in order to guide the member to the end of the map. And then creating clarity and assessing the environment, again, really important for both the blindfolded members and the guiding members, because the blindfolded members really needed to, again, clarify if they weren't understanding where they needed to go, or just if they were confused about something. And assessing the environment, they needed to kind of take into account the different sizes of groups. So for like the smaller group, assessing the environment wasn't as hard because they just had one person listening to. In comparison to the larger group, the listener really needed to focus on the different directions being given and kind of take them all into account when drawing the lines to like get to the end of the maze. And for the group members, creating clarity and assessing the environment, the larger group needed to take into account that they were a bigger group and it might be more confusing for the blindfolded members. So they needed to be constantly asking questions to make sure, did you understand? Do you need us to like repeat an instruction or something of that sort? Same with the smaller group, just because they didn't have multiple people giving directions, they still needed to ask questions to make sure that the person blindfolded still understood what they needed to do. So all of these were really involved in this activity.
All right, next we have discussion questions that we'll ask after the activity is over. Our first question is, what were the benefits of having a larger group work on this activity than a smaller group? And an example answer could be that having a larger group allowed for more perspectives, which ultimately can help benefit the person trying to do the maze. And our second question is, what are benefits of a smaller group versus a larger group? And this is, there's less multitasking and trying to listen to different team members, and it's a lot easier to just listen to one person within this specific task. And then our third discussion question, if you were the person who had the blindfold on, what was your experience trying to listen to your team members and complete the task? And obviously the answers will vary depending on who was blindfolded and their personal experience. But an example could be if they had a larger group, it could have been hard to take into account multiple perspectives. Maybe some people didn't participate as much, and so that could have been an example answer.
All right, and for number 4, our question was, how did this activity use collaborative leadership skills? And going back to the 6 practices, we would just kind of want the people in the classroom to include some of the practices that they feel that they really included. So for the larger group, they could really focus on sharing power and developing people, and how they had to make sure that everyone was included in specific things they did in order to get participation from all members of the group. And for like the smaller group, they could really focus on creating clarity. So what questions did both the person blindfolded and the person giving directions do in order to make this activity a lot easier and make them go faster? Number 5 is, for the larger group, did having members viewing the map from different perspectives make it easier or harder to guide the members? Again, one of the answers could vary. They can say, yes, it was harder, because someone viewing the map from the front side up can say you have to move right, but the person viewing it from the other side of the desk can say you have to move left. So the members had to work together a lot more in order to make sure that they were giving the correct instructions and they weren't confusing the person blindfolded. Or they can say, no, it was easy because we had a lot more ideas. So we had different ideas and different ways of getting to the map in a quicker way than the person with only one person guiding, that they only had their own ideas. Number 6, for both groups, what are some things you could have done to make guiding easier? Again, going back to the 6 practices, one of the possible answers they can have is just asking questions. I feel that asking questions is the one way to create clarity the best way, to make sure that everyone understands what they have to do. Like the blindfolded person might not know how, if you say go up, they might not know how far up you have to go. So the person listening would really have to ask questions to know what they have to do. And then the person guiding them need to ask questions not only to their group members, but the person that they're guiding to make sure everyone is participating and have their ideas shared and they all understand. And then last is, how did this activity differ from traditional leadership? One of the possible answers it can have is the sharing of power. Traditional leadership really usually only has one person kind of in charge and in control of the activity. So you don't really have to like include ideas from other people. It's really only like what they say and what they want. So in this activity, you really had to emphasize and focus on sharing that power and not only having one person being in control of this activity. So they could go back to the 6 practices, and that's developing people, sharing the power, and how this differed from when you are in charge of everything and you were only guiding them.
Okay, and lastly, we have some takeaways we hope students will gain from this activity. And one is that they will continue to develop and improve their collaborative leadership skills. And 2 is that they'll be able to distinguish from traditional leadership and collaborative leadership. And this is done through the activity because they're taking into account multiple perspectives, as we've mentioned before. And then lastly, a takeaway is to be able to apply these different practices of collaborative leadership into any leadership situation they may encounter, whether it's in their future job or in other classrooms around Purdue University. Thank you.
Thank you.